And now we're going to hear Ms. Klonari from Wind Europe. Good afternoon again. I hope you can hear me. Yes, we can. Thank you. I'd like to thank you for the invitation to participate in this discussion, particularly this week where we had so significant announcements in Greece regarding offshore wind projects. I'd like to say a few words as to the status of offshore wind in Europe today. We have 32 gigawatts in operation. Governments, however, have set goals such as 150 gigawatts or higher than that by 2030, 120 of which will be in the Northern Sea, in Ireland, and 19.6 in the Baltic Sea. At a national level, the first country nowadays is the UK with 15 gigawatts in operation, Germany 8 gigawatts, the Netherlands 4, and some other countries with approximately 2 gigawatts. I forgot to mention that I represent Wind Europe. I don't know to what extent you are familiar with that. This is the European Association of Generators of Wind Power in Greece. We represent our members vis-à-vis politics, policies at a European level. And personally, I deal with issues pertaining to inclusion of wind parks in the electric grid and development of the grid in general. So let me continue with the description of the status in Europe. To be more specific, in June 2022, we had 123 offshore wind parks in operation and connected to the grid. And currently, we have 3 gigawatts connected per year in Europe. However, if we were to reach these targets, this should be 20 gigawatts per year by 2030. As Wind Europe, on the basis of the experience we have acquired from these markets where we see a more intense growth of wind power, I'd like to point out the most important challenges or risks that could prevent some countries from reaching the levels and the targets. Something that sounds simple but is really important is for national governments to set goals, particularly and specifically for offshore wind in the NECP. That is, they need to be specific goals for offshore wind, and there should be a clear-cut plan that would calculate all necessary steps and all requirements through time. That is, we need to have clear goals at different steps until 2035, specific actions in order for the plan to be well implemented, to have the commitment. Well, there is usually no commitment of the grid to connect wind parks to the grid. Yet another problem is timely prevention, or rather, the need for a timely forecasting of the needs of the logistics, know-how, equipment, etc. Another big issue is licensing. The average time required for an offshore wind park to receive license from the point that it has been awarded a contract in an auction is to the operation is up to 4.5 years. In Belgium, it's just 2 years. In the case of France, it reaches 8.5 years. And in particular, this part pertaining to the licensing procedure is the longest one that could take up to 4 years. Another issue has to do with delays in connecting to the grid. particularly in cases where we need to have projects to strengthen the land grid. In many cases, there are no provisions for that, and the delays are caused due to that. Another important factor that needs to be taken into consideration right from the start is predictability with regard to the financial sustainability of projects and the revenues. So these are the four main challenges that we have identified as an organization. We have recently published our position as to the best strategies to overcome such challenges. It is a public document that is available on our webpage, and I would be pleased to forward it to anyone who is interested in finding out more about that. Another thing I'd like to stress vis-à-vis tenders. The plan for tenders needs to be very specific. It will allow for predictability, and this is not only important for investors and wind parks themselves, but also to logistics sector. It is really important to have a good design and planning of tenders. We believe that there should be frequent tenders in order to preempt low participation in some of the tenders. There needs to be a minimum capacity of 1 gigawatt. As Wind Europe, we are for the centralized system, covering as many parameters as possible in the design and planning of the tender. The areas, the way it's going to connect to the grid, the roles and parts of investors, of the operator of the grid. Other elements pertain to port agreements regarding logistics or even agreements with services and agencies responsible for maintenance and operation. And we also consider really significant, in fact, for governments to commit space and grid for parks on the basis of non-price criteria. On the basis of other criteria that pertain to the benefits of these projects for society. Now, to be more specific, with regard to the electric grid, the power grid, it is important for the grid to have a commitment. It is also important to have clear roles and obligations pertaining to the operator and the producers, those responsible for generation. And it is important to have as much detail as possible. To give you an example, currently we have 3 manufacturers of such equipment in Europe. They are overbooked for years, and the countries that will move in a standardized way pertaining to equipment, the connection to the grid, and will not call for individualized solutions. Countries that will be signing framework agreements with their suppliers will be the ones that will be able to meet the deadlines and objectives. Such agreements have been signed already between the German operator, TenneT, and companies supplying equipment for connecting to the grid. Regarding the support of the projects, we are in favor of two-sided contracts for difference. We believe that they offer most of the advantages. They offer stability to investors and security vis-à-vis the energy cost of energy price. So That's all I'd like to share with you right now, and I'm at your disposal should you have any questions. Thank you very much, Ms. Klonari. It is important to see that installations are lower than the objectives.